Hey everyone, this is Mayank Kothari and today we are going to revise the entire chapter of interest rate risk management. This is the English revision video, and for those students who are searching for Hindi revision videos can go to the YouTube channel and find a playlist there as SFM revision Hindi. There you will find all the chapters revision videos in Hindi. So before starting this chapter, let me clarify a couple of things that this is an extension. This chapter is an extension to the derivatives chapter. So unless and until you have gone through the derivatives chapter from my lectures or from your lectures or any other book, it will be difficult for you to understand the concepts here. So this is my humble request to go through the derivatives chapters first. Now the next thing is this chapter is one of the small chapters in the entire syllabus. So interest rate risk management, you can say, then startup finance and couple of theory chapters are also there. One of the chapter is interest rate risk management, although it is small, but it is difficult for a lot of students to understand, so revision is very much required in this case. Nonetheless, we are going to finish this revision video in maximum half an hour, let's say. I am assuming that thing, it may increase by the end of the video. So let's start with the topic, how we are going to revise this entire chapter. First of all, we'll talk about interest rate. What is interest rate? And then we will talk about interest rate risk. What are the risks in interest rate? And then we will talk about how to manage that risk. So first interest rate, then comes interest rate risk, and then comes interest rate risk management. This is how the entire chapter is divided by the institute. It is so simple. First of all, determinants. What determines the interest rate? Interest rate is something which you earn on your investment, and interest rate is something which you pay on your borrowings. Okay, so at the same time, it can be a cost to you, it can be an earnings to you. What determines the interest rate in the market is supply and demand. This is the most important factor out of all. Supply, if there is a more supply, the interest rate will be low. If there is high demand, the interest rate will be high. It all depends upon the same concept of economics, that high demand means high price and low demand means low price. High supply means low price. Inversely, supply is inversely related to the price. Same here, supply is inversely related to the interest rate and demand is directly proportional to the interest rate. Next thing is inflation. If the inflation is higher in the market, the prices are increasing, the interest rate will also increase at the same time. And the next thing, the third thing to determine the interest rate is government or RBI, you can say. These people, in order to maintain the economy, in order to push growth in the economy, they can sometimes decide to push money in the market, in the economy, or they can pull money from the economy. For that, they increase or decrease the interest rate according to the requirement. These are the determinants of interest rate. Now let's discuss about what are the interest rate risks when we invest money somewhere or when we borrow money from somewhere. Whenever the deposits and investments will be considered, deposits or borrowings will be considered, there we will have to understand that we are exposed to interest rate risk. So the first type of interest rate risk is gap exposure. From the angle of the bank, this is very important, and let me explain this to you. Let's have a look on this thing. Okay, I have already written it here so that we can save time. So this is a bank. Depositors will deposit the money with the bank and bank will give that money to the borrowers. So let's assume that 50 rupees has been deposited by some depositor at a fixed rate on which the bank is paying 3%, and 50 rupees is deposited by another person on a floating rate on which the bank is giving LIBOR. So 100 rupees is with the bank, and let's say entire 100 rupees has been given by the bank to the borrowers as a loan, and on that bank is collecting LIBOR. This entire 100 rupees is at a floating rate. So tell me one thing, what is the asset for the bank? The bank has given loan to the borrower. This is an asset to the bank, but the bank has taken money from the depositor. This is liability to the bank. But we agree with that this is a liability, but the next thing is which of the two liabilities is a rate sensitive liability? Rate sensitive liability means a liability on which the cost will increase or decrease if the interest rate changes. So floating rate is the rate and on which, in which case the interest rate keeps on changing, and on which there will be a different interest payment by the bank. So this 50 rupees which is at a floating rate which keeps on changing is called as rate sensitive liabilities. And rate sensitive asset here is the 100 rupees, entire 100 rupees, because it is entirely on a floating rate. So how to calculate a gap exposure? Gap exposure is rate sensitive asset minus rate sensitive liabilities. So assets of the banks are 100 and 50 is the bank's liability, rate sensitive liability. Okay. So I can say that there is a positive gap, 50 rupees. And let's assume that the LIBOR is 9% right now, on which the bank has given loan. So this 9% is the earning for the bank. Bank has given loan of 100 rupees, right? On which they are going to earn 9%, which is 9 rupees. And let's say this floating rate is not LIBOR. Let's say this is MIBOR or some any other rate or treasury bill rate or anything, on which the bank is paying, let's say 4%. Right now MIBOR is going 4%. So the payment will be 2 rupees. So bank is collecting 9 rupees, paying 2 rupees, and ultimately the net interest income is 7 rupees. Net interest income is 7 rupees. Do you think the gap exposure can be negative? Yes sir, it can be negative. If the rate sensitive assets are 70 and the liabilities are 90, then it is possible that the gap exposure is negative. Please understand that these are not total assets and total liabilities. These are rate sensitive assets and rate sensitive liabilities. So total exposure is negative. You are earning 9% on this, means 6.3. You are paying 4% on that. That means 3.6, and the total will be 2.7. The total earning is 2.7. Let's say 2.7. Okay. Now let's take an example. I have explained you the positive gap and the negative gap, both the things. Positive gap exposure and the negative gap exposure. Let's assume that interest rate increases by 1% in all the cases. So let's first take this situation. If the interest rate increases by 1%, 9% will become 10% and 4% will become 5%. What will happen in that case? This 10% will be applicable on 100, so our earning will increase. So earning will increase to 10 rupees from 9, and the payment will also increase from 2 to 2.5. But net interest income in total will increase. So 10 minus 2.5 is 7.5, right? So 7 to 7.5. What has happened? Because of increase in interest rate, the net interest income has increased because the gap was positive. This is the reason. But in case the gap is negative and the interest rate increases, what happens in that case? If the interest rate increases from 9 to 10 and 4 to 5, what will happen? On 70 you will be paying 10%, that is you will be receiving 10%, that is 7 rupees. On 90 you will be paying 5%, that is 4.5, and the net interest income will be 2.5. And because the gap was negative, you can see increase in interest rate has resulted into decrease in net interest income. So ultimately, positive gap, increase in interest rate, increase in income. Negative gap, increase in interest rate, decrease in income. So we as a whole we can frame a table like this. If there is a positive gap and interest rates are increasing, the net interest income will increase. If there is a negative gap and interest rates are increasing, the net interest income will decrease, and vice versa here. Understood? So this is all about the gap exposure. Next thing is a basis risk. Now what is basis risk? Let's say for example your assets and liabilities are on a different basis. You are paying interest on assets and liabilities at a different basis. In this case also it was a different basis because you were collecting the interest rate at LIBOR and paying the interest rates at MIBOR. So this basis is different. Both of them are not LIBOR and both of them are not MIBOR. This is where the basis risk arises. Have a look. Let's have a look on this. This is 3-month treasury based loan. This is an asset to you on which you are earning 3.25%. And this is 3-month LIBOR based borrowings. So this is treasury based loan. This is LIBOR based borrowing. Both the bases are different in assets and liabilities. So on liability you are paying 1%. Now what happens is, because the bases are different, the changes in both of them will not be same. So if the interest rates on treasury bills are increasing by 1%, it is not necessary that loan will also, the borrowing will also increase by 1%. It can increase by 2% as well, right? So here you can see earlier you were earning 2.25 as a net interest income, and now you are earning only 1.25 because the change here was higher than the change here. So this is called as a basis risk. The third is the embedded option risk. Embedded option is quite difficult to understand, but I can sum it up. Let's say there is a 15-year mortgage. This is an asset to the bank, and 3-year time deposit is there. This is a liability to the bank. The major difference is the timing is different. In the previous part you can see the timing was same, 3 month, 3 month. So both of them were maturing at the same time. But in this case what happens is bank will have to pay money, whatever it is, let's say 1 lakh rupees in both. So bank will have to pay 1 lakh rupees after 3 years. In this case bank will have to pay back. In this case bank will receive its 1 lakh rupees after 15 years. So there is a timing difference first of all. Next thing is, because the timing is different, the change in the interest rate will also be different. Let's say for example you are earning 7% right now on 15-year mortgage and you are paying 4% on the liability. So net earning income, net interest income is 3% or 3 rupees. But what happens is, because it has a long time, the interest rate keeps on changing, and let's say after 3 years or after some time, let's say 1 year, the interest rate has dropped. Interest rate on such type of loan has dropped to 5%. What will happen? The borrower who has taken money from you in this case will repay the entire amount. This is called as prepayment, and will borrow again at a lower interest rate because the interest rates are lower. Why he will do it? To save the interest cost. So he will repay this amount and borrow that amount, same amount. He borrowed 1 lakh rupees at 5% and repaid the entire 1 lakh rupees at 7%. So that 7% loan has been over now. But what has happened due to that? Now the bank is earning only 5% on the same amount. Earlier they were earning 7%, now they are earning only 5%. Whereas the 3-year treasury or 3-year liability rate is still the same, 4%, 4%. If this happens, this is called as embedded option risk. You were earning 3% earlier, now 1%. There is a loss in net interest income. We have discussed this in detail in the video lectures. Next thing is yield curve risk. Yield curve risk. Now what is yield curve risk? Because if the interest rates movement is non-parallel, so this is the major part, non-parallel movement is there. Let's have a look. This is 15-year mortgage, this is 1-year time deposit. 15-year mortgage, this is 1-year time deposit. The next thing you see here is the earning is increased by 0.5, in this case is increasing by 0.5%, but here the liability interest rate is decreasing by increasing by 3%. So the increase is not parallel. Parallel means increase of 0.5% here should have here and increase of 0.5% here. If both the increase are same, it will be called as a parallel movement. If there is a difference of 2.5%, this is a non-parallel movement. This is increasing by only 0.5. So our income is increasing by 0.5, but payment is increasing by 3%. So ultimately we are losing 2.5%. From 5% we are now earning only 2.5. Now what is the difference in this? See, first of all, there is a time gap. Timing is not same. If the timing would have been same, it would have been a basis risk, right? In the basis, what happens is the basis is also different, LIBOR, MIBOR and so on. In this case it can be the same, LIBOR, 15-year mortgage, LIBOR, 1-year time deposit on LIBOR. Both can be on LIBOR, because the timing is different, the maturity is different, the interest rates are different in that case. Okay, and this is called as yield curve risk. Next comes the price risk and reinvestment risk. Let's have a look. Let's say the interest rates are 8% right now and you are buying a bond at 100 rupees. Remember the chapter of security valuation, there we have learned that if the interest rates are increasing, the market price of the bond will decrease. The market price of the bond will decrease. Now let's have a look on this price risk. What happens if the interest rate increases? You have purchased the bond at 100 rupees, and if the interest rate increases, there will be two things. You will be able to sell the bond at a lesser price, because if the interest rate increases, the bond's price will fall, and you will have to sell the bond at a lesser price. So that's a loss. Here in this case, it will be a loss to you. Right? Price has decreased because of the increase in interest rate. Now you will be selling the bond at a lesser price. But one thing will happen, which is good, is now if you invest anything 90 rupees, even 90 rupees, you will get 10% income on that, which was higher than earlier. So it is good. The interest that you will invest, let's take for example, let's say you are earning, this is yield, right? Yield and coupon rate both are different, and let's say the coupon rate is 5%. So coupon rate is same all through the while, it doesn't changes. What changes is the yield. Now let's imagine, and coupon rate is based on the face value, not the market price. So 5% will be paid on 100, it will be 5 rupees. Here 5% will be paid on 100, it will be 5 rupees, and here also 5% will be paid on 100, it will be 5 rupees. So this is the interest income that you are earning, right? Now what used to happen earlier, that this interest income, when you wanted to invest this again, the interest rate that you could have earned was 8% only. Earnings would have been 8% at that time. But the good part here is you can invest this 5 rupees at a higher interest rate. So this is called as reinvestment. First of all, you have earned this 5 rupees on your original investment, and when you go to the market to reinvest that amount, you get a higher return. I'm not saying coupon, this is higher return. So that's a good part. In case of reinvestment risk, it's a profit. There is no risk, that means. But what happens if the interest rate decreases? If the interest rate decreases, let's write it in red, to let's say 6%, the market price will increase to let's say 110, and this is a good thing. There is no price risk in case the interest rates are decreasing, because the market price at which I can sell the bond is higher, so it's a profit in this case. But I will be able to invest this, or we can say I will be able to reinvest this coupon that I have received at a lesser interest. Earlier I was investing the same 5 rupees at 8%, now I am getting only 6% on that. So this is a reinvestment risk loss, and this is your final table. Let's have a look. Okay, so this is how we have completed all the types of risk. Next comes the methods to measure. How to measure? See, we have learned the types of risk, but we have not learned the calculation part, right? How to measure what is the risk? What is the risk of every type? So there are some methods. The traditional maturity gap analysis, the gap exposure that I told you, then comes the duration part, then the simulation, and then value at risk. See, value at risk has been learned by us in the risk management chapter. If you remember, we used to calculate what is the value which is at risk, which we can lose basically. So gap exposure calculation have been, I have showed you the calculation in this case. We have discussed the calculation in this case as well. Duration and simulation is not there right now in the syllabus. So nothing is there in the syllabus in this chapter. Okay, so you can just remember the methods, that's it, nothing else. Then comes the hedging. We have discussed from the very beginning what is interest rate, and then we discussed what are the risk of interest rate. Then we discussed how to measure the interest rate risk, and now we are going to decide how to hedge, or we can say manage interest rate risk. Basically, we want to reduce the interest rate risk. There are two basic methods to manage the interest rate risk. One is the traditional method, the other one is modern method. In the traditional method also, there are two different methods. One is called as asset and liability management, all theory. You can read it and complete it. I am not discussing here it in revision video. But the major part is the forward rate agreement. This was the traditional method. This is the traditional method. Forward rate agreement. Before moving over to the other topic, let's discuss first the forward rate agreement. So let's say this is time 0 and this is time 6 months. You want to take a loan. You don't want to take a loan here, but you want to take a loan after 6 months. There is some kind of a fear in your mind that when I will go to take the loan from the bank after 6 months, the interest rate would have increased by that time. So let's take for example today's interest rate, floating rate. Today's interest rate is 10%, and you have this kind of this fear that the interest rate after 6 months may increase to 13%. That means I can take the loan of 1 lakh rupees at 10% today, and the same loan will cost me 13% after 6 months. Tell me one thing, do you think anyone wants to pay higher interest on the same amount? No. So there is one solution. Why don't that person take the loan today itself? Why he will take the loan today itself when he doesn't need it for the next 6 months? Why he should pay interest for the coming 6 months when he doesn't need the funds? Okay, so it is sure that we will take the loan after 6 months only, but we don't want to pay higher interest. In that case, you can enter into an agreement with the bank where you can fix the interest rate for forward, for future. This is called as an agreement of interest rate. This is called as a forward rate agreement. Let's say for example the agreement between you and bank is at 11%. Bank said that you can come after 6 months and take the loan at 11% because we agreed on that rate. In this case, this is called as reference rate, 10%. This is also a reference rate. This is reference rate at time 0. This is reference rate at time 6 months. And this is called as forward rate agreement, FR or FRA. FRA rate, 11%. This has been decided by you. And you can enter into a forward rate agreement with anyone. Like you can enter into this agreement with me also. If you enter into an agreement with me, does that mean after 6 months I am going to provide you the loan? No. I can give you hedging. I cannot give you loan. For the loan, you will have to go to the bank and borrow at 13%. But why would you pay higher interest rate? That's it. I will only pay you. The agreement, the party on the other side in forward rate agreement will pay back 2% to you, and your net cost will be 11%. So instead of directly borrowing the money at 11%, you will be borrowing the money at 13% and receiving 2% from my side. So paying 13 and receiving 2% is as good as 11%. So this 2% is called as the settlement amount. Settlement. Okay. Now understand that how did we calculate settlement? Settlement of 2% is calculated as a difference between reference rate and forward rate agreement. So can I say that it is a difference between reference rate and forward rate? Yes, sir. But tell me one thing. If you take the loan after 6 months, do you think the interest is to be payable on the same date? No. Interest is payable 1 year after, or let's say if you are taking a loan for 6 months, then 6 months after the loan date. So let's assume there are 360 days and you are taking a loan only for 90 days. So logically speaking, if you take the loan of 13% per annum for 90 days only, let's say you take the loan for 90 days only, that means you will have to pay the interest of this on this date, right? In this case also, this 2% will be payable on this date. But the rate is fixed today, na? The payable will come on this date. But since to me and you, we are the forward rate parties, you are going to take the loan from the bank only after 6 months. I am just going to give you 2% extra because you are paying higher on that date. So I will pay you 2%. But do you think I will pay you 2% on this date? No, sir. The 13% is payable after 90 days from this date. The 2% is also payable after 90 days from this date. Right? But because you and me, both of us calculated, and we could calculate that, we can easily calculate the profit or loss on this date itself. So what I can do is, instead of paying you on this date the 2%, I will pay you the 2%'s present value on this date itself and finish the contract. The contract will get over here itself by settling the present value of 2%. Why present value? Because originally this was payable after 90 days and it is being settled here itself because we can settle. That's why. So the present value of this will be paid on this date and the contract will get over. How to calculate this? The question is how to calculate the settlement in FRA. Now I will create the formula. This is reference rate minus forward rate. Now tell me one thing. This was 13% and this was 11%, and both of them were per annum rates. So first of all, convert that per annum rate into the rate applicable for your loan period. Per annum means 360, or let's first calculate now, then we'll create a formula. So it was 13 minus 11, and then we converted this into, this was 360 days rate and we converted this into 90 days rate. So now we have converted. So 2 into 90 divided by 360, that means around 0.5%. Now 0.5% will be applicable on which amount? Principal amount. The loan amount that you have taken. In our case it was 1 lakh rupees. It was 1 lakh rupees. This is called as notional principal amount. Notional amount. The loan will be taken by you from the bank only. Doesn't matter how much amounts loan you are taking. Our contract is for 1 lakh rupees. So that's why this is called as notional amount. Why it is called as notional amount? Because you entered into a forward rate agreement with me just to be secure about the interest rate. No principal amount has been exchanged between us. I didn't pay you 1 lakh rupees, you didn't give me 1 lakh rupees. It is just the amount on which the interest will be calculated and will be paid by me. So that's why it is called as notional. So I will take 1 lakh multiplied by 13 minus 11 multiplied by 90 by 360. Am I right here? 0.5% on 1 lakh will be how much? Around 1000 rupees. How come? It's 500 rupees. So it goes to 500 rupees. Now tell me one thing. This 500 rupees is payable on this date or on this date? It's simple. It is on that date. How come? Sir, it's very simple. 13 was payable after 90 days. 11 was also payable after 90 days. The balance will also be payable after 90 days. So let's calculate the discounted figure. Discounted value of this 500. How to discount? It's very simple. Whatever the interest rate going on in the market on that date will be used as a discounting rate. So 1 plus 0.13 divided by, or I can say 0.13 multiplied by 90 by 360. Because I want to discount by 90 days only, I will convert the reference rate into 90 days rate and then I will use this amount. So this is how we discount now. 1 plus r, we divide it by 1 plus r. So it will be 0.0325, 1.0325, and the final answer will be 484 something. So forget that. But what is the formula? Have a look. 1 lakh means notional principal amount into 13% is reference rate, 11% is the forward rate, into 90 means days till maturity. How many days are left till maturity? And days in a year is dy. Then divided by 1 plus reference rate multiplied by days in a year, sorry, days till maturity divided by days in a year. So how difficult this formula is to understand? If you understand the logic, there is no formula that you will have to mug up. Let's have a look here. Nominal amount multiplied by reference rate minus forward rate, DTM by dy, days till maturity divided by days in a year. If these are months, then we will say month till maturity divided by months in a year. Please understand, huh? And this is how we calculate the settlement amount. Discounted. This is the denominator you use for discounting, and the numerator is used for calculating the original amount. Couple of more things that you need to understand about the forward rate agreement is this. See, read it along with me. Because there is no initial exchange of cash flows to eliminate arbitrage opportunities, the FRA price is the fixed interest rate such that FRA value is zero on the initiation date. You can forget that. FRAs are identified in the form of X by Y, where X and Y are months and multiplication symbol is read as by. So we read it as X by Y. So let's take an example. To grasp this concept and the notion of exactly what is the underlying in FRA, consider a 3 by 9 FRA, which is pronounced as 3 by 9. Now this 3 indicates, the first number indicates that the FRA expires in 3 months from today, and the underlying is implied by the difference in 3 by 9, means how much period, for how much period you have taken loan. You have taken a loan for 9 minus 3, 6 months period. FRAs are cash settled with the payment based on the net difference between the interest rate and the reference rate in the contract. So a couple of things again. In this case, what was our FRA? How to write it? From this point, we wanted to take the FRA. So the loan period starts from this point after 6 months. So we will say 6. And the loan period ends from today. From today, it ends after 9 months. 6 plus 3 months, 90 days means 3 months. Na? So this is how the FRA is quoted. Firstly, we decide for how much, like after how much period the loan period will start, and then we decide after how much period the loan period will end. So this is 6 months, this is 9 months. We will call it as 6 by 9 month. And the difference between these two, 9 minus 6, is called as a loan period, for which we actually take a loan. 9 minus 6. Okay, so this was all about FRA. Let's discuss about the interest rate futures. One thing you need to understand clearly in case of interest rate futures: the underlying in interest rate future is not interest rate. In interest rate future, the underlying is bond. Underlying means the asset. It's the bond. Okay, so have a look. Interest rate futures price is calculated like this: 100 minus interest rate. So if the interest rate going on in the market is 5%, we will say the futures price is 95. It means the bond is selling at 95 rupees in the interest rate futures. If the interest rates are 5, both of them are inversely related. Let's say if the interest rates are increasing, let's increase this interest rate to 6%. What will happen? 100 minus 6, it will be 94. So can you understand, if I increase the interest rate from 5% to 6%, the price of the interest rate future goes down from 95 to 94. With this, I can conclude that interest rate increases, interest rate futures will decrease. If interest rate decreases, interest rate futures will increase. So when you say you want to buy interest rate future, that means you are buying the bond. If you say you are selling interest rate futures, that means you are selling the bonds. Now you tell me, if your expectation of future interest rates are increase, that in future the interest rate will increase, what will you do? You will buy futures or sell futures? Let's discuss this. Clearly I can write down like this. This is the relationship. This is interest rate and this is interest rate futures. So if I ask you one thing, that interest rates are going to increase in the market, what are you going to do? You will buy interest rate futures or sell interest rate futures? You will obviously sell interest rate futures today. Today you have to take a decision. Expectations are here, na? So the buying and selling decision will also be taken here itself. At a higher price, you always want to sell. So what will happen? If the interest rates are expected to increase, you should sell futures. Because if you will sell interest rate futures today, in order to close the transaction, you will buy it tomorrow at a lesser price. Why lesser price? Because the interest rates are expected to go up, hence the futures will go down, and I would want to buy at that. Let's take another example. Let's assume that interest rates are going to fall. It means that interest rate futures is going to rise. This is interest rate futures and this is interest rate. So if your expectation today is that interest rate is going to go down, what will you do with the interest rate futures? You can see if the interest rates will go down, the price of the futures will go up. So it's better to buy today and sell tomorrow, right? At a lower price, buying is always preferable. You should end up with the profit. So let me tell you one thing. If your expectation is that interest rate is going up in the future, today it means that interest rate futures price will fall. That means action that you need to take today is sell IRF today, because tomorrow the price will fall and you will buy it. If the interest rate are expected to decrease in future after 3 months, that means the price of the futures will increase, and at a higher price tomorrow you should sell it. So today you should buy it. So buy interest rate futures today. Ultimately, interest rates are expected to increase, sell futures; expected to decrease, buy futures. Simple. Good. Let's move on. I will take the examples after all the discussion. Now two things happen in case of interest rate futures right now. Let's say you have taken a sell position in interest rate futures. Then at maturity there are two options, 1 and 2. Cash settlement or physical delivery. Let me tell you one thing, at present in India we are only dealing with the cash settlement part. Cash settlement. So if you have sold futures in the beginning, you will have to buy back, and the difference between sell and buy will be given to you, and this is all settled in cash. You have to do nothing else. Okay. But when there is a situation of physical delivery, that means you have to deliver the bond. You promised to deliver or to sell the bond in interest rate futures, and in case of physical delivery you have to give the bond. So let's take example of bond 1. Let's say you wanted to deliver this bond. In the beginning there is only a promise to deliver the bond. It is not necessary that which bond you will be selling. So here if you have to deliver the bond, you will have to deliver means sell the bond. So let's say the selling price was 100. It was set as 100 when we didn't know which bond would have been sold in the market after 6 months or so. So in case of physical delivery, what you are going to do, you are going to buy this bond and then sell this bond. This is how it is going to happen. So let's say bond 1 on that day is trading at 90 rupees or 102 rupees. Okay. What will happen? According to the stock exchange itself will give some kind of conversion factor of bond 1, and let's say the conversion factor of bond 1 is 1.10. It means that you will be able to sell the bond at 100 multiplied by 1.1. That's 110, not just 100. It's 100 multiplied by 1.1, the conversion factor. So that's 110. So you will be buying the bond in the market at 102, selling the bond in the market at 110, and the profit will be 8 rupees. This is only applicable in case of physical delivery, and this is called as conversion factor. Here you are making a profit of 8 rupees, right? Let's imagine a different bond, bond 2, and the market price of that is 98. You will buy this bond and you can deliver this bond, and let's assume the conversion factor given by the exchange is 1.09. Although the conversion factor is less, you are going to sell it at 100 multiplied by 1.09, that's 109, and the profit in this case is, the profit here was 8 rupees, right? And the profit in this case is 9 and 10, 11 rupees. Now you tell me which bond, just a second, let's make a couple of changes. Here the profit was 8 rupees, and let's say the conversion is 1.03 only here, conversion factor. So you will be selling the bond at 100 multiplied by 1.03, that's 103, and the net profit is 3 and 2, 5. Now you tell me which bond is cheapest to deliver. What most of the students will do is, sir, this bond is cheapest to deliver because the price is less. No, this bond is not cheapest to deliver. Cheapest to deliver means out of the two bonds, which bond you will prefer to sell in the market, in which bond you will have a lot of profit, and this bond is cheapest to deliver. This is called as CTD bond. Cheapest to deliver means the bond which gives you higher profit, 8 rupees. This is giving you less profit. So don't go with this 98 and 102. The major role is played by the conversion factor. Okay. So understand that CTD means the bond which gives you higher profit or lesser loss. If there is a loss in there can be a loss. If there is a loss, then the bond with the minimum loss will be CTD. The bond with maximum profit or the minimum loss will be called as a CTD bond. So there are two things that you learned here in case of physical delivery. What is CTD bond and what is conversion factor? Okay, let's move on. This was all about the interest rate futures. Let's talk about the interest rate options. Now what happens in forward rate agreement? Let's say you have fixed the interest rate at 11% on borrowing, and you don't want that the interest rate should increase. If the interest rates are 13% on that date in the market, you will get 2% back. You will get 2%. So let's say 13%. You will get 2%. But if the interest rates are, let's say, 10% on that date, that means you will have to pay 1%. Ultimately, your interest rate, net interest cost, will be 11% only, because that's what you fixed in the beginning. Now, what happened in the forwarded agreement is, after entering into a forwarded agreement with some party, there can be a profit to you and there can be a loss to you as well. It doesn't matter whether you take the loan or not. You will receive 2% from the FRA party, or you will pay 1% to the FRA party. So there can be a profit, there can be a loss in both the cases. But what if there would have been an option where we fixed 11% as the maximum rate? Now in this case, when the market rate goes at 13%, you get 2%. You get 2% from this party, because you are paying 13 in the market, you promised at 11, so the balance should be given back to you. But if the interest rates are 10% in the market, you pay nothing. I will explain this in another word. This will be easy to explain. See, when you enter into a forward rate agreement, you promise to pay the amount, that interest on the loan. Doesn't matter what is the spot rate. Now, let's say, if on the maturity the interest rates are 13%, still you will have to pay 11% as promised. And even if the interest rates are 10%, you will still have to pay 11%, because that's what you promised in the beginning, and that is the part of hedging. It doesn't matter now what is the interest rates on the spot rate. But what if there is an option at which you fix the same rate, and in case of 13% is the market rate, you pay 11%, and in case of 10% is the market rate, you pay 10%. Which situation do you find good? This situation you find good, because in this case there is no loss. This is the maximum that you have fixed. Above that you will not have to pay, and below that you will be taking the benefit of lower interest rate. See, here we have the benefit of lower interest rate, but it is only in this case, option. In FRA there is no benefit of lower interest rate. In option it is. So this is called as a cap option. Cap means fixing the upper limit. So when we say fixing the upper limit, that means we can take the benefit of all the lower interest rates. This is possible in case of borrowings, because borrower has a risk of interest rate going up, and that's why he will always buy cap option. For the investor, the risk is the downfall. The risk is falling interest rate, and for that purpose he will buy floor option. Floor option is similar to cap option, where you fix the lower limit, that interest rate should not go beyond this. Let's have a look. Let's say you invest 1 lakh rupees today, okay, and the market rate is or let's take an example that you want to invest 1 lakh rupees here. Or let's get back to this point itself, 1 lakh. Today the reference rate is 10%, so that's why you are earning 10% on that. But you have this fear that interest rate will go down and you will get less interest in the coming time. In that case, what should we do? You can take a floor option, where you can fix the interest rate, the lower interest rate. So if tomorrow the market goes to 12%, you will get 12% interest. If the market goes to, or I can say, you will get 12%. If the market goes to 14, you will get 14. If the market goes to 11, you will get 11. And if the market goes to, let's say, 7%, from the market you will get 7% only. But as promised in floor, the minimum should be 10. You will be getting 3% here in the floor. So at all point of time, in these three cases, you will not get anything from this floor party, the one who sold floor to you. You are the buyer. In these three cases, you will not get anything because the interest rate was already higher than what was decided. Once the interest rate goes below 10%, you will get something. So you can see in buying floor, there is no loss, only profit. In buying cap also, there is no loss, only profit. And this is similar to call and put option, where there is no loss, only profit. And for that purpose, there is one thing that you need to pay extra in option, that is called as premium. We don't have to pay any kind of premium in forward rate agreement, but here we pay the premium, and that is the maximum expense. That is the maximum expense in call or put option, sorry, cap or floor option. There is one more concept called as collars, and collars can be made by two ways. Either you buy cap and sell floor, or you sell cap, sorry, you buy floor and sell cap. Now, when do you think you are going to buy cap? It is only possible in case of borrowings. Why? Because in case of borrowings only, you have the risk of interest rate rising, and that's why you want to limit the upper, you want to put a limit on the interest rate, upper limit on the interest rates, and that's why you will buy the cap. And when do you think you will buy floor? You will buy floor only in case of investment or deposits. Because in that case, the fear is, the risk is the interest rate can go down and you will receive less income. That's why you want to put a limit, lower limit, below which it cannot go. And if it goes, you will get a floor payment receipt. Okay. So buying cap and buying floor is understood, sir. Why we will sell floor? I will tell you. When you are borrowing, that means you are expecting the interest rate to go up. That means you are not expecting that the interest rate will go down. So why not to take the benefit of premium, earning premium by selling floor to someone else? This guy will buy floor and this will sell floor. And what if the market rate never goes down? It goes up only. So you are secured in this way, and it never went down. That's why you never had to pay anything in the floor to this party. So selling floor or selling cap means taking an extra advantage of premium, because selling floor or floor means putting a lower limit, the risk of interest rate going down, and you don't have that risk. So why not to sell this floor to someone who is thinking the interest rate will go down? Because you might think that he is of the wrong perception. According to me, the interest rate will go up. According to him, the interest rate will go down, and I'm taking the benefit of his expectation, benefit of the risk that guy has. I'm going to sell floor to him. I will promise him that if the interest rate goes down below certain percentage, I will pay you something. And according to me, interest rate will never go down. It will go up. So if that happens, I will not have to pay anything to that person. And in return, I will earn premium from him. This happens with the insurance companies also. Insurance companies sell you the insurance and they estimate that the accident is not going to happen and you have lost the premium. That's how it happens. So these are the three concepts: cap, putting an upper limit; floor, putting a lower limit; and collar means this. Collar can be created by cap and floor simultaneously, but you cannot create the collar by buy cap and buy floor, buy floor and buy cap, sell floor, sell cap. No, it's one buy and another sell, because at a time you are borrower or investor. Yeah, if you are borrower and investor in both in same case, then obviously you will buy cap and buy floor, but you will be buying cap for the borrowing and buying floor for the investment. So it will not be treated as a collar. So this is all about the options. In interest rate option also it is a cash settlement. In reality you take the loan at the market rate only. If it goes beyond your expectation or beyond you wanted, then you get a receipt, settlement in forward rate agreement, settlement in interest rate futures, and settlement in as a cap receipt or floor receipt in interest rate options. Next is interest rate swaps. Have a look. And swap is very easy to understand. An interest rate swap is an agreement between two counterparties in which one stream of future interest payment is exchanged for another based on a specified principal amount. So this is the receiver, this is the payer, and this is receiving fixed rate. So this is a fixed rate receiver, he is a fixed rate payer, and floating rate is the opposite part. He is paying floating rate and he is receiving floating rate. Why these parties are going to do this? I will tell you why this is going to happen. Let's take an example. So let's say this is party A and B. A and B. This is bank 1 and bank 2. Just imagine the situation. This party has taken a fixed rate loan and this party has taken a floating rate loan. For the purpose of understanding, we will assume the amount of loan taken by both is same. So he is paying around 10% and he is paying LIBOR plus let's say 0.50%. So he is paying every year, he is paying 10% interest and every year he is paying LIBOR. So he is paying fixed, he is paying floating. Taken a loan for 10 years, 2 years has gone, 8 years are left, and now both the parties has changed their opinion. This party is thinking that the interest rate will go down in the coming time. Interest rate will go down. That means if the interest rates are 8%, still he will have to pay 10. If the interest rate goes down to 7%, still he will have to pay 10. Floating rates are going down and he is paying fixed rate. So this is the situation for him. Floating rates are going down and he is paying the same amount. So this is fixed and this is floating. Now you tell me, if such is the expectation, don't you think this party A would want to shift himself into floating rate? Because at this point, the interest rates are low and he wants to pay low. No, who doesn't want to pay less interest? So this party wants to shift from fixed to floating. This is the meaning. This party wants to shift from fixed to floating. Now let's take an example on the other side of this party. Interest rate. He expects that the interest rate will go up, and if the interest rate goes up, what happens is this. So this is floating, this is fixed. In reality, either of the situation will happen, both will not at the same time. But can you see one thing? Both of them has a different opinion about the floating rate. He is expecting the floating rate to go down. That party is expecting the floating rate to go up. Now he is paying floating interest rate. He is paying floating interest rate, and if the floating rate goes up, he will have to pay more and more interest rate in the coming, more and more interest in the coming time. So this party wants to shift himself from floating to fixed rate in such situation. So he wants to convert himself into floating to fixed. So that party wants floating to fixed, this party wants fixed to floating, and only when you have the opposite expectation or requirement, swapping can be possible. If both has the same requirement, swapping is not possible. So let's take an example. Both the parties will meet each other and they will exchange the cash flows. What will happen? This party A is paying 10% fixed to the bank, what B will happen? These parties, both of them, there are no formulas in this case, both will decide based on their own agreement. So B will decide, B and A will decide that B will pay 10% to A. So that for A, 10% paid, 10% received. The story is over. And fixed, this A party will pay LIBOR plus 0.5 to B. So from the angle of B, let's have a look. B is paying LIBOR plus 0.50, receiving LIBOR plus 0.50. The effect is nil and ultimately is paying fixed. So for B, the net payment has been converted into fixed, and for A, the net payment has been converted into floating. This is how the swapping happens. Now you will decide, sir, why don't we negotiate with the bank and convert from fixed to floating? Mostly it can also happen with the bank, but what happens is there are some charges that you will have to pay, and it may not be beneficial for you to convert the existing loan, and some banks may not be interested to convert the existing loan from fixed to floating, because when it is the time for the bank to earn income or earn interest, they are not going to take such a decision that will result into a loss to them. Okay, so the original loan will keep going on as it is. You will be paying the same amount, fixed to fixed, floating to the banks, but these stream of payment will be exchanged by these two parties, and the swapping has happened. Got it? So this is called as interest rate swap, but this is only in case of hedging. Let's suppose both of them have not taken the loan yet. That is when after the loan has been taken. I said 10 years loan is there, 2 years has gone and 8 years are left. This is that situation. But what if the loan has not been taken yet and both of them wants a loan? Understand this. Let's say A and B. The fixed rate to A is 10% and floating is LIBOR plus 2, and 15% it is LIBOR plus 1. Eight and LIBOR plus 1. Let's take this as 7. So can you see one thing? B has the benefit both in terms of fixed and floating. It is not necessary always, but one condition is there. The difference in fixed rate should be higher than the difference in floating. The difference in fixed is 3% and the difference in floating is 1%. And the difference between, please understand, the difference between the difference of fixed and difference of floating is called as spread. Quality spread, 2%. This can be the profit to both the parties. Now let's imagine A wants a fixed rate loan and B wants a floating rate loan. Now what will happen in this case is, when you calculate the spread, that is 2%, that is called as the maximum possible gain to both the parties. So both the parties can decide to share this gain. If nothing is given in the question, we conclude that both the parties will share a gain equally. So 1% should be the profit to this party and 1% should be the profit to the second party. Okay. Party A and party B. And how this is going to happen? Since A wants fixed rate loan, ask him to take the opposite loan, that is take the floating rate loan, and B wants floating rate loan, ask him to take the fixed rate loan. So from the bank they will take the opposite loan and then do the exchange with each other. So this is how it is going to happen. Have a look. This is A, this is B. So understand, they will pay to the bank first. A will pay LIBOR plus 2% because he has taken floating rate loan, and he will pay fixed rate which is 7%. Agree? Now first thing, any rate, either 7 or L plus 2, you can exchange with each other. So I will say receive whatever I have paid, A has paid, I will receive from B. So B will pay this much amount to A. So it will be a pay to him L plus 2, right? L plus 2, L plus 2. So for A, the story is over. He paid to bank and he received the same amount. The story is over. And for him, the story is still there. Now is the time to pay to B, because we have received something from B, we will pay something to B, because then only it is called as swapping. Swapping means paying something and receiving something. So how much we should pay to B? It's very simple. We wanted a fixed rate loan, and it was costing us 10%. According to the spread, we can get a benefit of 1%. That means why not we should pay 9%? Because to be, because only then we can say we are in a benefit, when we are on a better situation in swapping. Originally, in order to take the fixed rate loan, it was costing 10% directly from the bank, and to get a 1% benefit, 10 minus 1 comes to 9. Pay this much amount to B and he will receive it. Now calculate the net cost in swapping. So L plus 2 plus minus got cancelled. The net cost to A is 9% in terms of swapping. But from the bank directly it was costing him 10%. Can I say he got the benefit of 1% by swapping? Yes, sir. If he would have gone to bank to get a fixed rate loan, it would have costed him around 10%. But in terms of swapping, he got the fixed rate loan. See, fixed rate is payment, but lesser interest, 9%. So the net benefit is this 1%. Now let's talk about that. Now you can clearly see plus 9 minus 7 is plus 2, and it will be like this. I will write it here. Minus 7, I will open the bracket, minus L minus 2 plus 9. This is how the transactions are. So it will be like this again, minus L minus 2 plus 2, and it will be minus L only. So he is paying only LIBOR. In swapping, he wanted a floating rate and he is paying a floating only, that is LIBOR. Otherwise, if he would have gone to bank, he would have had to pay LIBOR plus 1%. So there is a benefit of 1% to him also. This is how the transaction happens, and it's very simple. First of all, the first rule is the difference between fixed rate should be more than the difference between floating. So 3 should always be greater than 1. Okay. After that, 2% you decide who is going to share how much. If not given, take 1% for each party. So if A is about to gain 1%, that means it should cost 1% less than what he would have taken a loan. What if he would have taken a loan directly from the bank? So fixed rate loan for him was 10%. It should cost 9% only now after the gain. Then only we will be able to say it's a gain to him. This is interest rate swap. So this is all about interest rate swap. Then comes the topic of swaption. Swaption is easy to understand. This is a combination of swap and option, where in short, I will decide, there are no questions on that. So here you take a swaption. Swaption means an option. You buy an option by paying a premium, where you decide that after 3 months, if you think right, you will enter into a swap agreement or not enter into a swap agreement. Means you will exercise this swaption or not. One of the two things will happen. After 3 months, you will decide based on the situation in the market whether to go for the swap or not. This is the swaption. And once the swap is taken, the transactions are normal as it is in interest rate swap. So this is called as swaption. There are 4 types of swaps. Before swaption, okay, let's complete the swaption first. This is the meaning, features, users and categories. I am keeping these things for you. You can just read it and complete it. It's just need a reading. Unless and otherwise you read it, you are not going to get it no matter how much I explain. But there are 3 types of swaption: Bermudan swaption, European swaption and American swaption. I will explain all of them. So let's take an example. You take a swaption here and the expiry is here. First of all, if you can exercise this option anytime in the period, this is called as American swaption. If you can exercise this option only at expiry, it is European. And if you can exercise this option only at given intervals, not all the time, but on given intervals only, then it is Bermudian swaption. So let's have a look. I will write down. I will make sure that you also mark this in your chart. Bermudian swaption means you can exercise this option on a specified dates, not all. European means only on the expiration date, and American means any day that falls within a range, any day. So that's the difference: Bermudian, European, and American. Now let's come to the plain vanilla rate swap, basis swap, asset rate swap, and amortizing rate swap. So plain vanilla swap is a simple swap. This is what I explained you. Here you can see in this question, these two parties were exchanging fixed rate loan with a floating rate loan. So when we do the fixed versus floating, fixed versus floating exchange is there, swapping is there, it is called as plain vanilla swap. When floating versus floating is exchanged in a swap, it is called as basis rate swap, because the basis here is different. Basis rate swap. And do you think the floating versus floating is possible? Yes sir, why not? This floating is on LIBOR, this floating is on MIBOR, so the basis of both the floatings are different, and that's why this swap is possible. Then the third one is asset rate swap. Now what do you mean by asset rate swap? Asset rate swap is similar to the plain vanilla swap, but there is some difference. Have a look. Similar to structure in the plain vanilla swap, the key difference is the underlying of the swap contract. Rather than regular fixed and floating loan interest rate being swapped, fixed and floating investments are being exchanged. The principal amount, the assets are exchanged. It's not the amount, it's the asset. In a plain vanilla swap, a fixed LIBOR is swapped for a floating LIBOR. What happens in an asset swap? A fixed investment such as a bond with a guaranteed coupon payments. If it is a guaranteed, then only it's a fixed. This bond is swapped with the floating investments such as index. So let's say for example, I have purchased bonds on which, or I have fixed deposits on which I am earning, this is investment on which I am earning fixed rate, and some other party is there who has an investment in equity share, 10 lakh rupees of the fixed deposit, 10 lakh rupees of the equity market, and we both are exchanging. He is giving me his equity shares, I am giving my FDs to him. So you can see FDs are fixed rate, this is floating, it keeps on changing. And when we are exchanging the asset, this is called as asset rate swap, because after exchanging the asset, he will earn fixed rate on investment, I will earn floating on equity shares. So earning has also changed, asset has also changed. This is asset rate swap. In plain vanilla swap, this principal amount never gets exchanged. Here also principal is not exchanging, entire asset is exchanging. Amortizing rate swap. It is similar to the plain vanilla swap. But in plain vanilla swap, let's say the swap period was 4 years. Let's say the swap period was 4 years, and if the principal amount is 1 lakh in plain vanilla, it was same throughout the period of swap. And here in amortizing rate swap, it is similar to plain vanilla, fixed to floating exchange, so 9%, 10% or LIBOR, but the principal value on which the amount will be calculated keeps on decreasing. This is amortizing rate swap. That's it. The principal is reducing here. Understood the fact? So this is all about the interest rate risk management chapter entirely. Couple of things that I can explain. See, this is one more thing that we learned in the security valuation chapter. This is the formula to calculate forward rates, 1 plus s2 to the power 2 divided by 1 plus s1 minus 1. What's more is left? I think we have covered the maximum thing, and I'm going to skip the practical part. Practical questions in some other video, some other day. I will explain all the questions, like it will be a summary of revision of practical questions. For the time being, bye bye. We'll start the next lecture. I think the next chapter is going to be the foreign exchange and risk management. We'll start with that chapter, and soon we are going to complete it. This is going to be an interesting chapter, and you are going to love it for sure. Bye bye.